The Arabian Peninsula was known as Magan, an enigmatic land from which copper was extracted, diorite, a hard stone for sculptures, and wood from the mesh tree. These written accounts date back to the end of the 3rd millennium and the beginning of the 2nd millennium BC, and confirms the commercial traffic between Mesopotamia and various regions of the Near East, Central Asia, and the Indian Ocean. Magan in Sumerian, or Makan in Akkadian, it has been identified with the southeast of the Arabian Peninsula. At the end of the 4th millennium BC, specifically during the 3rd century BC, Mesopotamia saw the emergence of the first cities, the result of agricultural and technological development and a growing social complexity, which demanded products that the region lacked, but that were essential for urban life. Mesopotamia was a great alluvial plain with hardly any resources, with no wood, stone, or metals. So it was essential to establish a long-distance trade network connecting the Mesopotamian plain towards the south with the Arabian Gulf and the west and south of Iran, ancient Elam, Luristan, and Achaemenid Persia, and to the north with Anatolia, Armenia, Syria, and the Mediterranean. Despite this, it was the cradle of metallurgy, whose raw material, copper, was imported. There are cuneiform textual evidence relationships between the Magan and Mesopotamia. However, it is as early as the 6th to the 5th millennia BC. The search for raw materials led to the first contacts after the expansion of Uruk through the Susian plain and the contact with the area of Dulmun, present-day Bahrain, towards the end of the 4th millennium BC. Archaeometric analyses confirm the presence of copper from Magan at various Mesopotamian sites since the 5th millennium BC, and there is evidence of Mesopotamian ceramics in Bahrain, in Magan, that is, Oman and the UAE. Mesopotamian texts inform us of the trade routes providing access to the natural resources of the Arabian Gulf region and the Indus Valley. The first king to speak of Magan was Sargon I, who, in one of his royal inscriptions, refers to the ships moored at Akkadian docks, having come from this region of the Lower Sea. Around 2200 BC, the Akkadian king Naram-Sin celebrated the conquest of these territories for their economic value, as from there various much-needed raw materials were imported to Mesopotamia, such as wood, diorite, soft stone, probably chlorite, and mainly copper. The Akkadian Empire was contemporary with the regional culture of an-Nar, whose tombs, such as those of Al-Sufuh and Hatta, contained copper objects, especially weapons, and various artifacts of the Mesopotamian origin. Around 1700 BC, coinciding with the Wadi Suk period, the copper trade between Magan and Mesopotamia was interrupted by the appearance of new supply sources, especially Cyprus. The reorganization of the commercial network had consequences for local cultures. Communities on the Omani Peninsula were forced to relocate their metallurgical production workshops on new routes, Iran and Baluchistan. These commercial contacts would be especially evident during the 1st millennium BC with Luristan, a territory known for its production of bronze weapons, swords, daggers, axes, maces, quivers, and halberds. Both casting and embossing techniques were used. Among highly stylized human and animal forms, the zoomorphic juncture plays an important role, especially on brooches, bracelets, and weapons. Archaeological investigations carried out in the mountains of Al-Haya in Oman have shown the existence of several areas in the Sohar region linked to mining industry since the 3rd millennium BC. Recent studies have brought to light important facilities for metallurgical activity, such as those at Wadi Al-Hilo in Sharjah, dating from the period of an-Nar, those at Saruq Al-Hadid, active between the period of Wadi Suk and the Iron Age in Dubai, and those of Uqdat al-Bakra or As-Safa in Oman at the beginning of the Iron Age. Ancient Magan is also cited in Assyrian, Babylonian, and Achaemenid Persian sources from the 1st millennium BC with the name Qade. Neo-Assyrian texts mention Magan, or Qade, as a land of conquest, incorporated into the title of the kings, and one from which products such as copper, eru in the Akkadian language, were imported. Unfortunately, Assyrian cuneiform texts are very scarce, so it is difficult to confirm what role this territory played within the Assyrian Empire. Kings Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal, 680 to 630 BC, note in their inscriptions that they were sovereign over this part of the ancient Near East. However, the Oman Peninsula, integrated into the commercial routes of the 1st millennium BC, does not seem to have been part of the territory of the Assyrian Empire, but rather of its commercial policy. Meanwhile, royal Achaemenid inscriptions dates to the time after the Assyrian period found in Persepolis and Naqsh-e-Rustam in Iran, equated the Akkadian toponym Qade with the ancient Persian Makah, a variant of the Sumerian Magan, and the Akkadian Makan. The reason for the omnipresence of Makan Qade, as shown in the Mesopotamian and Persian texts for such a long period of time, is undoubtedly its metalliferous wealth, but also its geographical location, the key to control the Strait of Hormuz, navigation through the Arabian Gulf, and the access to the Indian Ocean. Saruq Al-Hadid, 20 years of research. The archaeological site of Saruq Al-Hadid is located in the Rub al-Khali Desert, one of the largest in the world, occupying almost the entire Arabian Peninsula. This site was discovered by His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, Vice President, Prime Minister, ruler of Dubai, who was flying over this zone of the desert in a helicopter and noticed a large black spot in it and decided to investigate its origins. Since then, there have been annual campaigns by various teams from the Jordanian Department of Antiquities, the University of New England, Australia, the American team, Arkansas University, the Municipality of Dubai from 2009, and it is now in charge of the site, the Archaeological Institute of San Isera, Spain, the University of Warsaw, the University of Tübingen, Germany, and the University of Seville. The site is very large, around 1.5 hectares. Large portions of it remain unexcavated. To date, a charcoal manufacturing area and another area for smelting have been excavated. Currently, work is focused on one sector featuring a large concentration of artifacts and slags. The entire region must have undergone a gradual drying, with an increasingly arid climate eliminating surface water, though aquifers exploited through wells remained. Charcoal finds suggest vegetation rich in trees such as acacias, which are still abundant in the region. Archaeological investigations allowed us to state that the first settlers settled where today there is a sabkha, that is, a dried-up area where there used to be water on the surface. Later, the Shamal wind must have covered the site with dunes. The discovery of fragments of bones and shells constitute evidence of the availability of the ancient ecosystem's natural resources and the usage that the inhabitants of this place made of them during various periods of occupation. The Paleobiology Laboratory at the Andalusian Institute of Historical Heritage in Seville has analysed more than 200,000 bone fragments. There is a clear difference between the various sectors and eras. While the Bronze Age settlers generated more remains of wild species, such as dromedaries, oryxes and gazelles, those of the Iron Age produced more remains of domesticated cows and goats. The two periods are separated by 1,000 years, and the climatic and cultural conditions that made it possible to raise livestock, or simply to trade in these species from nearby enclaves, were probably different. The site, stratigraphy. The first occupation of Saruq is documented at the end of the 3rd millennium BC, or the beginning of the 2nd, during what has been called the al-Nar period, a historical phase that on the Arabian Peninsula is characterized by the alternation of sedentary lifestyles and grazing. Some areas became stable settlements, usually linked to oases, where a subsistence economy based on agriculture and herding could exist. The occupation of Saruq Al-Hadid is verified by numerous hearths containing charcoal remains that were probably used as kilns and post holes scattered approximately across the entire area of the site excavated to date. These holes must have supported structures similar to barasti huts, which can be found even today in certain regions of Oman. In archaeological records coinciding with the Wadi Suk period, approximately in the first half of the 2nd millennium BC, economic activity can be verified by a greater number of homes and hut post holes, as well as remnants of bones, ceramics, and lithic artifacts. In addition, abundant vestiges of slag and copper objects, such as arrowheads, have been found. In the later archaeological records, dated approximately to the second half of the 2nd millennium BC and the first part of the 1st, the most fertile period of the site is observed, with abundant slag and numerous archaeological materials with high-quality gold and silver jewels standing out, along with weapons such as copper and bronze swords, daggers, axes, and arrowheads, ceramic vessels of various types, and stone pots. There is clear evidence of Mesopotamian influences in the form of bronze censers and Luristan bronze artifacts, with numerous weapons that, in the last phase, were made of iron. In addition to some artifacts indicating the veneration of a deity related to the Arabian horned viper have been preserved in large receptacles featuring iconography depicting a reptile. The causes that led to the definitive abandonment of this site are not exactly known, although one of them probably can be related to climate change, which caused progressive desiccation and ostensible environmental changes. And the last occupation at the site was during the early Islamic era. The worship of a deity related to the Arabian horned viper on the Arabian Peninsula during the Iron Age is widely documented, with temples at Salut and Al-Qubayb. Saruq Al-Hadid ceramics portraying snakes and bronze votive offerings in the shape of these creatures have been found, which suggests a workshop for the production of these artifacts or the existence of a sanctuary itself. No complete metallurgical kiln structure has been documented at Saruq Al-Hadid. Only cavities excavated at the Sebkha, with ashes and fragments of the walls that covered it, have been recorded. Based on these evidences and with contemporary parallels, these structures can be reconstructed. These are oval or circular cavities measuring up to approximately 1 meter in diameter and 1 meter deep, with the upper part made of stones and clay. An area at a distance from the main nucleus, dedicated to the burning of wood to obtain charcoal, has also been excavated. This was done in small oval and quadrangular holes of 1 meter to 1.5 meters, sometimes interconnected in groups of 3. The wood was covered with branches and shrubs to prevent the sand from adhering to the charcoal, a process that could take hours or even days. It is estimated that 20 kilograms of charcoal are needed to operate a metallurgical furnace. Goldsmithing was one of Saruq Al-Hadid's most important activities. Beautiful jewelry has been found, as well as ornamental beads, gold and silver foil, and cuttings besides copper wire. This is high-quality craftsmanship, not only based on its use of very sophisticated techniques such as granulation, filigree, and lost wax casting, but also due to the variety of jewels. Beads with grainy decorations of various sizes and shapes are common, which is a symbol of the Expo Dubai 2020, and earrings in the form of tiaras with horns, rings, and gold leaf decorated with animals, for example, a hare.